And do you know how much it takes when best is not enough? When clouds roll in across the sky and hide the brightest moon, it's then you'll find some stars don't shine.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see everyone on this Mother's Day. Congratulations to all of the moms who are in the audience this morning. If you are a mother, would you raise your hand? Let's give them a nice round of applause. We're glad that you've chosen to spend your morning with us. This is going to be a very eventful day. My name is Jeff Arnett from the Baseball Hall of Fame, and I have the distinct privilege of beginning all of these festivities today with a program that is obviously very popular. I'm sure by the time we're well into the show, this theater is going to be full because these ladies and so many of you in the audience have wonderful stories to tell. There is no way that we can do justice to the history and the legends and all of the memories that these 7 women have and many of you in the audience have. I'm going to stay mobile throughout this program. I'm going to move all around the audience a la Phil Donahue because I'm sure that you have questions. Some of you may have stories as well, but certainly these 7 ladies do. We brought them all up here rather than surprise each of you with their introductions. We wanted to dispense with that and get right to it because these 7 women and so many of you have, I'm sure, more than an hour's worth of stories and memories and recollections that we want to make sure we entertain as many of them as possible. So let's begin with introductions. It's my pleasure to introduce to you, and we're going to go from your left to the right. This is Dolly Brumfield-White. Dolly, everybody give Dolly a great round of applause. Shirley Burkovich. Gloria Cordes-Elliott. You can see her picture up on the screen right now. Cione. Helen Hannah-Campbell. Helen's picture is on the screen behind her. Isabel Lefty Alvarez. And Jane Moffet. You'll see historic photographs of them from their playing days, kind of cycle through gently during the program, give you a chance to glimpse them during their prime. But today, they're here to share memories of their careers. Helen, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, goody.
And you know why? Helen, you were a chaperone in the league for 4 years. 4 years, 5 years?
5 years. Okay.
Helen, they called you Sarge.
Well, I just got out of the Marine Corps after 30 years of service. Thank you.
So you spent more than 3 decades in the Marines, and I might add that you were a Master Gunnery Sergeant.
That's right.
Which I believe is the highest rank for a non-commissioned officer in the Marine Corps.
You're right there, too.
Okay. And not only were you a pioneer from the time that you spent in the All-American Girls League, but also a pioneer because a female Master Gunnery Sergeant is pretty rare, is that right?
Pretty rare, and that's what I am.
So, Helen, before we get to the others and allow you to tell a little bit of your story, let me mention something that you might find interesting about Helen. Your father was Truck Hannah.
Truck Hannah.
Who was a teammate of Babe Ruth's.
That's right.
Was a star in the Pacific Coast League for many years.
30
years. And you also had a very distinguished classmate in high school.
Yes, I did. Richard Nixon was my high school classmate.
So.
And now I'm a docent at his library in Yorba Linda, California, and I've been up there 15 years. And he was a nice man. I liked him.
Good. We're going to come back to you in a moment, Helen. Because I know that many people are going to have questions about what it was like to be a chaperone in the league. But let's go to your left. Did you have something you wanted to say? No. Let's go to your left, because we have Isabel Lefty Alvarez. Now, Lefty, your story is also very unique in that you joined the league from Havana, Cuba.
Right.
Tell us about that.
I'm a very lucky person.
So how did you happen to join the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League while living in Havana?
I came to the United States in 1947. We had a Cuban team then. the Americans went to Cuba in that year to exhibition games. So we played exhibition game, the Cuban team and the American team. Max Carey was the president of the league. So after that, they decided to bring some Cubans to the United States. I was then 14 years old. In 47, no, 47, I was 14, yeah. No, I was 13. so then they brought all these Cubans on the following year, in 1948, they brought some Cubans to play here in the United States. But they told me I had to wait till I was 15. So in 49, I was 15, finally. And I went to, I came to the United States to play professional baseball with the American. And that was a great deal. And I am a very lucky person, like I said, because right from Cuba to the United States and to the Hall of Fame.
Now, Lefty, leaving Havana, Cuba, to come to the United States at such a young age, how did your parents feel about that?
Well, my mother... Okay, you're right.
You remember your mother?
It's Mother's Day, so
well,
it's okay.
She was the most important thing in my life. Every time I talk to her, I will not be here. It will be with my mother. It's too bad that I get so sentimental. I always do. And she liked baseball. She liked baseball more than I did. And she was a fanatic, fantastic. She liked she followed the Almendares, they call them the Alacranes. They were in the blue uniform. And she used to sit in her little radio and listen and light up candles so the favorite ball player would get a hit. And I used to watch her. I said, "Boy, she was something else." So she knew about baseball. And she was the one who started me on training. And she said, "Well, you're going to be a ball player because the Americans are coming in 1947, and I want you to get ready to play baseball." So she took me everywhere, and that's all she wanted me to do is play baseball. And also, her idea behind also is the chance to come to the United States because there was a better future. And I want to tell you, I don't know how she knew all this. But good thing she knew.
Yeah.
Because I was so young. And I was a person who listened to your mother. And that helped. It worked for me because I had discipline. And obeying your mother is very important.
Yeah. It's a great story
because
for Mother's Day.
Look how far I got.
We're glad you're here with us today, Lefty. Now, Lefty, you were very young in 1947, but someone else at this table was also very young in 1947. Dolly, you were only 14 years old. Is that right?
Correct.
14 years old, you left home in Alabama, and Lefty came from Cuba to the United States, but you went from the United States to Cuba. Talk about the beginning of your career.
Well, it's 1946 that I actually tried out for the league when the All-American girls were in Pascagoula, Mississippi for spring training. And some friends of the family had seen in the newspaper in home, Mobile, that they were going to have tryouts if you could go down. And so my mother took me out of school one April afternoon, and we drove down to Pascagoula, and I tried out for Mr. Max Carey. But after I tried out, he said, "How old are you?" I said, "Well, I'm 13, but I'll soon be 14. But he went over to my mother and says, "Ms. Brumfield, we don't take the girls this young." And my mother said, "I didn't want you to take her. I only want to know what you thought." So Mr. Carey invited me in June of that year to go to Chicago to be put on a team for the experience because I'd not had any opportunity to play organized ball at all. And what ball I'd played had been on the playgrounds with the boys. But then in November of that year, Margie Hogerson was the only other girl from Alabama to play in the league. She came out and met my family and was my chaperone then to go from Mobile down to Miami, where we met up with all the other girls for the trip over to Havana for spring training. And that's where I actually officially tried out and was selected for the league. That was 1947.
Mm-hmm. Now, if I recall, there was another team that was training in Cuba in 1947, a major league team.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about that, Dolly.
Well, that question's come up quite frequently as a historical one, because in 1947, the Brooklyn Dodgers had also gone to Havana, Cuba for spring training. And they had normally done their spring training in Florida. But 1947 was very significant, for there was a gentleman who joined the Brooklyn Dodgers by the name of Jackie Robinson. And that was one of the reasons that the Brooklyn Dodgers went to Havana. Our team then followed the Brooklyn Dodgers. They were there, they left, we came in.
Great story. I might add that Dolly is also the president of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League Alumni Association, and your secretary is sitting at the opposite end of the table. That's Jane Moffet. Jane, you had quite an influence on Lefty, and you still do, from what I understand.
I'm her counselor. And you only find that out by trying to check in a hotel, and the lady, she said, "Your name, please?" And I said, "Jane Moffet." She said, "Oh, you're the Cuban's counselor." I said, "I am." I said, "When did I get promoted?" And she said, "Well, when she checked in, she didn't care where her room was, but it had to be next to you because you are her counselor." You notice where she's sitting today. Dolly said, "Leave that seat. Lefty should be next to Jane." So I think I've adopted Lefty.
And when you travel to Gay, you still room together, is that right?
Oh, yes, it's 1949.
So you both
She
started...
hasn't changed, and I haven't taught her much English.
We see Lefty in the uniform of the Chicago Colleens. That was the team that both of you began with, is that correct?
That's correct. We were both on a traveling team in 1949 and 1950.
How did the traveling team work? We've heard about the Peaches, and we've heard about the Lassies and some of the others, but the Colleens were a traveling team that really had no home.
Yeah, what happened the previous year, the attendance was exceptionally low in Springfield and in Chicago. So they took those two teams and made them into a touring team. We were lucky enough to travel 26,000 miles in a bus one summer. We used to get in a hotel and pray that they had a paddle fan, and we'd cover our pillows so that when you went in, you could flip it. It was a little cooler underneath.
Yeah.
At that point, we had 4 Cubans, and Lefty was one of the 4. We had Mickey Perez with us, Chico, and we also had Mita Marrera. So we had a combination. Lefty, as she indicated, was very young. I never caught Lefty as a catcher because she was on the opposite team. I have more memories of Mita because she hit me about 4 times. She had a temper, and I was batting cleanup, and we were down 1 run, and there was a runner on second that they wanted to move to third, and I bunted, and it didn't make Mita very happy. So when I came up, she'd go, big home run hitter, bunting. She called me a snake in the grass. It took me 2 days to find out what she said because she swore at me in Spanish.
Did she sit next to you for all of those 26,000 miles on the bus?
No, no, I was closer. I really got to know Lefty through Mickey because Mickey was in essence older, and Lefty's parents and Mickey's parents' mothers were very close friends, so the only way that Lefty could come to the United States is if Mickey would be with her. Mm-hmm. So Mickey was very quiet. Lefty was at one point, too.
So, Jane, you had a great influence on Lefty. You were a catcher. Shirley, you played every position but catcher, is that correct?
That's correct.
And someone who had a significant influence on you was your chaperone, Helen Hannah-Campbell.
That's right.
And you still travel together, is that right?
We certainly do. Now I'm the chaperone.
So, Shirley, I have to ask you, because I know that the question is going to come up about the movie A League of Their Own that really brought to light your story and gave significant exposure to the history of the AAGPBL. You were in the movie. You
Yes.
had a pretty prominent role, especially at the end of the movie.
Well, I wouldn't say it was prominent. I had a fleeting glance on the screen, but it was fun. It was a great experience.
What are your memories of being here in Cooperstown for the filming of A League of Their Own?
Well, we were here for 10 days for that little section at the end of the movie, and we had a great time. Penny Marshall was just wonderful to us. She invited anybody that wanted to come to be in that movie. They could come out, and I think, if I remember correctly, there was probably 40 to 50 of us that came.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a great, I don't know, we brought back a lot of memories. We were out on Doubleday Field playing or thinking we could play. And anyway, but it was great. We had a great time, a great experience here.
Mentioned that you played every catcher or every position but catcher. You were known as the super sub, is that right?
Well, I don't know if I was a super sub, but I certainly enjoyed my time with the league and my positions that I did get to play.
Besides Helen, who else on the table here was a teammate of yours at one time?
Well, I was on that 50 tour with Jane Moffet and Lefty. So we
Any stories that you
for
can
just the 1 year.
1 year.
Yeah.
All right. Now, to your left, Shirley, are two of the greatest pitchers in the history of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. Jean, you spent probably as much time, if not more, than anybody else in the league. I think you were in for 10 years, is that correct?
Yes, I was.
10 years, and you'll be happy to know or interested to know that Jean Cione threw 2 no-hitters while pitching in the All-American Girls League, both in the same month. Is that correct?
I believe that's right, yes.
Tell us about your career, Jean.
I was a 15-year-old when the Rockford Peaches came to Rockford, Illinois to make Rockford their home city. And my father and I, and he was my very best friend, went to the ballpark, and I saw the Rockford Peaches play, and I said I'd like to be one of those someday. And at 17, they held a tryout in Rockford, and I was fortunate enough to have enough raw talent and skills to make the invitation to spring training and to ultimately be assigned to the Rockford Peaches. And that began my 10-year tenure in the league.
Not too many other women played as long as you did.
Oh, I'm sure they did. Perhaps they just didn't mention it, but it seems to me that many played that long, yes.
Okay. Now, to your right, another great pitcher in the league, Gloria Cordes-Elliott. Gloria, you have an interesting story because in 1949, tell us where your tryouts were.
On Staten Island, New York, where I live,
Okay.
the touring teams came to play one day, and it was advertised in the local paper, so a couple of friends and I went to watch the game, and they had tryouts before the game. And the manager had asked if anyone pitched, so I raised my hand, and I said I did, and he took me aside and had me throw to Jane, and I always said if he asked if anyone was a catcher, I would have raised my hand anyway, even though I didn't.
But you also got to play at Yankee Stadium, is that right?
I didn't know. The touring team did.
Okay.
I was hoping that our team was going to go because there was some talk that I was up in Racine at the time, and they were saying that Racine might go, but then the 2 touring teams went and played there.
Okay. Now, like Jean, you threw a no-hitter, too, but it was an interesting no-hitter. Tell us the story of that.
I'm not sure, just, I know one got rained out in about the 6th inning.
Okay.
And I was just a rookie at the time. It was my first year. And I don't really know what else to say about it. I was cursing the rain.
You're being very modest. So both of these ladies had wonderful careers as pitchers in the league. Now, Helen, let's come back to you.
Okay.
So, because you got to see the league from a different perspective, all right? You were
Altogether
chaperone.
different.
Tell us what it was like to be a chaperone in the league.
Well, from March or April until September, it was a 24/7 job. And I was glad I had my military training behind me because it was used every day.
Helen, what are some of the interesting stories that you recall from being a chaperone? Some of the funny moments, and talk a little bit about the movie, because chaperones were depicted very differently in the movie than you recall.
Yes, they were. And they didn't counsel with us about that to begin with. But the things that happened to that poor chaperone in the picture would never have happened to me, I'll tell you that. But nobody has mentioned managers unless you're going to get to them. But
go right
the
ahead.
First 2 years I was back there, my manager was Bill Wamsgans. And the sports writers and the announcers had a terrible time with Bill's last name, Wamsgans. So the sports writers came to him and asked if he wouldn't change it. They had such tiny space in their scorecards that they couldn't get Wamsgans in there. So he went to the lawyers and had it changed to Wamby, like Brown or Jones or something like that. So then we knew him the rest of the time by Bill Wamby. And my main memory of Bill is that he executed the only unassisted triple play in World Series history with the Cleveland Indians in 1920. And the funny part of it is when I say this, when we're at gatherings like this, somebody in the audience will always say, now let me see, an unassisted triple play. There couldn't have been anybody out. Now, do you know how he did it? Oh, there's a couple of hands go over here. It was great. Man on first and second, nobody out, hit and run on. The batter hits a line drive over the pitcher's head to the second baseman who had come in to cover second base with a hit and run on. So that was the first out. The men on first and second had already started their advance to second and third. So when the runner at third base tried to get back to second base, Bill was standing there with the ball in his hand. That was the second out. And the man coming from first to second was bearing down on the plate, on second base, and Bill just reached out and touched him. And he ran into the dugout. He turned around, looked back out, and the 8 players on his team were still standing in their positions. Because this had happened just like that.
Yeah.
And so he said, fellas, come on in, the inning's over, I did it for you. But he was a great man, and I enjoyed his seniority, the 2 years he was with us. Great guy.
So Bill Wamsgans, great figure from baseball history, one of the managers in the league. We heard several of you refer to Max Carey,
Yes.
another Hall of Famer.
Yes.
Any of you interacted with Max Carey and have stories to share of his involvement in the league?
The touring team did,
Okay.
Jeff. When we were sent to Chicago, and he was at that time heading all of the gals that were there that were trying out. There may have been initially, I would say, 50 to 60 of us, and of course they were going to narrow that down to 30. My first encounter with Max Carey was a little embarrassing. First of all, I had never played ball before in my life, and here I am being shipped on a train to Muskegon. And of course, there were 7 rookies there, and we all got sent to Chicago, and that's where the tryouts were being held between Max Carey and Lenny Zintak, who was the scout that was going throughout the country. And he looked at me, and I was tall then and also thin, and he said to me, what position do you play? I said, I'm not sure. He said, what do you mean you're not sure? I said, well, I never played. He says, what are you doing here? I said, I'm not sure. And he said, well, you're tall, let's try you on first base. I said, fine. And the next day, the gal who was catching got hurt. So he said, we need a volunteer. And dummy me, not knowing what was involved in catching, said, hey, I'll try it. So the next day I was behind the plate, and of course I didn't have a glove again. But they did supply the catcher's mitts at that point. But he stressed very strongly to me in the short time that I was with him, because when we left Chicago, he did not travel with us. Lenny Zintak went with us, the scout. But he was very strong on fundamentals. And his major approach when you got on base was he was going to instruct you very closely as to how far off you could go and at what point you made the move if you were intended to steal, because, of course, he was very strong in that area when he played himself. Right. But that was my involvement with Max. And of course, with Jimmy Fox, I also had that privilege.
Right.